So, shared skin. I thought the best way to go through this tour is to, I suppose, talk about the selection of the works, some details about the artworks, but this shows very, there's a lot of information that's already available. The walnut labels are very clear, the catalogue essay is very clear as well, so I thought that this is a great way to get some insight into the selection, its delivery into the space, and its presence in this space alongside so many other artworks. I think personally I love the conversations that are building between the works and between the spaces, and almost like conversations are building across countries and across worlds in this cube of ours. So I will turn to some notes just to keep myself on track. This is from the catalogue essay. The notion of the family could be perceived as a problematic concept. Its appearance has surfaced and resurfaced historically and curatorially in a somewhat neglected manner. Plainly put, the family is a source of exhaustion, conflict and trauma. Writer Sophie Lewis also argues that the nuclear family, in particular, is a conservative patriarchal structure tethered and bound with capitalism as a system. Furthermore, the classical nuclear family, man, woman, children, embodies a model that no longer aligns with our growing understanding of gender and gendered roles. Lastly, as we watch the climate crisis continue, convincing arguments are brewing on the suitability of this burning earth for the next and future generations. We're finding more ways to become relatable. There are more of us who live alone, unmarried, childless, free, and are living for much longer. We host multi-generational homes, blended families, and are embracing the fluidity of genders, domestic roles, and how it functions in the home. Societies are reconfiguring and moving away from Western ideals of families with genetic links and reforming with the chosen few who can uplift and create a safe haven from the world. We seem to hold on to this static and archaic idea of the family, yet these new forms of arrangements have been normalised without us noticing. Whilst politics and mainstream media hold on to this historical viewpoint, powerful myths of family are shifting beneath us. More recently, artists are portraying a range of familial relationships, from blood relatives to intergenerational kinship systems to queer communities. It is a theme that we can all comment and critique. It does affect everyone. Shared Skin inquires how we define these affiliations and presents a complex picture of what a family can be. Giving thought to familiar relationships with places and people, this exhibition positions the family in dialogue with other important conversations on ancestry, history, politics, class, and identity. In particular, by centering the perspectives of First Nations and culturally diverse artists, Shared Skin ensures that we acknowledge that kinship systems have preceded Western art theory and that necessary conversation needs to be drawn from their absence within the contemporary art vernacular. To start in this room, I feel like, I suppose this journey around family and networks and systems of learning was about sort of creating a space that looked at two positions of the cosmos and of country. So as you enter into the space, you are, the most visible work is Jennifer T. Jennifer T is a Amsterdam-based artist, and please welcome to come round, gather a bit closer if you like. Jennifer is a Chinese-Indonesian artist based in Amsterdam. She is also a ceramicist, a choreographer, a sculptor, and uses fabric, ceramic, glass, and natural fibres. These suites of works are brought together through research of the cycle of the moon. And for the development of this project, we went through a series of consultations with First Nations leaders, with First Nations choreographers to understand the moon in relation to First Nations storytelling. And Dreaming speaks to the moon as a sort of point of light. In some stories it's male, in some stories it's female, but it's a driving cyclical force in many stories, and its connection to land, food and animal is very present in that storytelling. Jennifer holds the same sort of connection in her work and her practice, And what she's trying to present here is this idea of the body molting, the body sort of shedding the skin, and for us to kind of perceive ourselves as being an other sort of being. Like, what is this process of kind of understanding nature, to be outside of our body, to shed one's skin, to be reborn, but I suppose to also understand our connection to a larger cyclical nature of the world. So the fabric that Jennifer uses is the waste from pineapples. So it's the skin of the pineapple is then turned into a pulp and then turned into a sheet, and then it's laser cut into these typographical maps that call upon her ancestors. So in Indonesian mapping systems, there's lots of stories of migration, of moving between countries and other islands. And so she kind of creates her own version of these stories by creating otherworldly sort of geographical shapes and designs that connect her back to a history and to an ancestor that she's wants to make contact with. The glass on top of the shrouds, which she calls them, these are the items that will be performed with this afternoon. Again, it's about creating this kind of second skin, this idea of like if you were to be snake-like, or if you were to sort of like she was saying over a Zoom about being fossilized, like what would that sensation be like? I think she also wants to bring in, by bringing performance into her work, it's really about bringing slowness, and by that intentional slowness, you're acutely aware of time and space and of nature. So for the performance, you'll notice, you'll see without giving too much away, that things are immensely slowed down. The breath is a very, it's like a metronome to the work. It's about showing that this rise, this inhale and exhale is so important to all of us, living, breathing, and those that have passed on. Natural materials are also really important. The idea that she wants to connect with other materials from around the world, other forms of migration stories, are a pivotal part of the performance as well. So she really wanted to understand Kaurna plant life and First Nations, Indigenous plant life that has an important role. And we were very happy that whilst we were sourcing materials for Jacob's work, which is behind you, we were also sourcing work for Jennifer's. And so there was this beautiful discussion between the two. And I think that the curation of this show really has been about this sense of inclusion with one another. I think that whilst I had the great pleasure of selecting these artworks, I wanted to ensure that everyone knew each other as well. I think that this model that Ruang Rupa created at Documenta was really a phenomenal sort of sense of engagement, that like really if you're to be a part of a group show, then your group should know one another. And so the footprint of this exhibition was designed quite early so that everyone knew who they were alongside, and so that we could have those conversations together. And I think that what's come through that is a really strong sense of each other's work, that particularly if we're going to be taking from the land and from taking from country, that there's a respectful practice that's happening of where we're sourcing those materials from. So couldn't have planned a better segue. Jacob's work behind is this beautiful film. Underneath is sand from Garunda country. It's Innes National Park. The shape of the sand, just as I was sort of speaking about collecting those materials, the shape comes from a dreaming that speaks of a woman and her afterbirth. And the shape has been, if you look at it from an elevated state, that there's this idea of a body of a woman laying, resting with her afterbirth. Jennifer mentions in her artworks as well that there's this, you know, the idea of the mother, the idea of the womb is very important. It's this sort of state of a body that's just, you know, at a point of creation. There's something sort of mystical and magical in that. So yeah, Jacob wanted to have that shape underneath. The artwork that he created, this is sort of, this was one of the first works that was selected, and we were working really hard to make sure that, that there was enough time to develop something in collaboration with the Narungga Family Choir. Jacob is a part of a language rejuvenation program that him and his family members are relearning their First Nations language and learning song together. I think that this opportunity for him, personally, he wanted to see the youngsters of the collective sort of have a bigger role. Gurunda was a work in the Adelaide Festival last year, which I think it wore out a lot of the elders. And so when he came to the family choir with the idea of participating in this exhibition, it was about encouraging the younger kids in the group to stand up and participate. So there's a soundscape that's been created by KTB, who is a music producer who has sort of overlaid sound of the Narungga Family Choir and kind of built this soundscape to a lot of drone footage which has been collected and was used in the Gurunda performance last year. But what I found striking about this work, especially having gone to Gurunda and spending time with Auntie Lynette Newchurch, who was part of the family choir, I think that the dualities of what he brings together really speak to this kind of shift of the idea of the cosmos and connecting all of these ideas, and then we sort of land on country and then get an understanding of what settlement and what has happened on the land that we're working. So Dagari Boogie Boogie Tomorrow, a long time ago, acknowledges and continues a millennia of storytelling between First Nations family along the York Peninsula and travelling beyond the boundary to neighbouring countries and states. I just want to, Jacob's exact words, that it encourages intergenerational learning of lost language between elders and future leaders. Dagari Boogie Boogaloo exemplifies the strength and spirit of Ngarrindjeri, Ghana and other First Nations culture and stories that have been lost along this coastline to industry, displacement and colonisation. Drone footage scans and profiles the coastline along with revenue building industries that have deteriorated significantly due to economic impact environment. Evoking the spirits and ancestors and singing proudly in language, this filmic work asserts that country does not forget. So whilst, there's some beautiful scenery along Yorks and along Gurunda country, you can sort of, he splits the edit with lots of shots of beachside waterfronts, industries that have been lost, old sites that are traumatic and have traumatic and devastating history to First Peoples of that country, but as well as this kind of sense of spaciousness and emptiness. There's a real sense of absence, even though so much history and stories are being held in those very sites. So I feel like this room is a really great kind of start to this idea of what families have endured, the families and networks that we're a part of, existentially, spiritually, but from this point onwards, and we'll now move into the next room, you kind of start positioning this idea of the family on this country. So if you'd like to follow me into the next space. Okay. So it's a great pleasure to have Nellie with us for the opening and the opening weekend of this show. I think a really strong part of this exhibition was always about bringing together mothers. I was always conscious that as appealing as an invitation can be to working mums, it's like, it's a heavy task to take in between caretaking, kids, school, everything else, but and a newborn. On top of my invitation to Nellie, there was a newborn in the household, so she had to choose. No. But what an incredible outcome to have. This is a collaboration between Nellie and her 4 kids. Particularly this work resonates with me personally, that Nellie's been really forthright and very importantly persistent in acknowledging her children as part of the work, down to their names included in the contract. They're on the credit list. I was really inspired, and I think it's a really great example to set to children that being an artist is a job. It's a paid job, it is a profession, you can earn money out of it, and yeah, I think you've set a remarkable example for your kids. So I'd like to pass this over to Nellie to introduce Continue.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional owners whose lands we gather on today, and the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that acknowledgement to everyone that's here today, and thank you all for coming and listening. So yeah, my name is Wanella Donovan, nee Mackenzie, and this artwork is called Continuum, and I've got some notes here on my phone that I wanted to share. I'll just bring those up. So you might look at this and a bit closer. Oh, sorry. I'm used to getting told to be quiet. If you ask Mum and Hubby, I'm a bit loud, but then so are the kids, so we have to be. So if you look at my artwork, you might wonder what it actually is. What are the materials that have been used? And something that's really important and close to my heart and my family's heart is the weaving of emu feathers. Now you'll notice that in the lamp part, and you'll also notice that there's some hair. Now that hair belongs to my mum, and she's a significant elder in our family, knowledge holder and protector of country. And then we've got some coral gum nuts, some quandong seeds as well. And you'll notice that also extends to the vessels beneath, as well as inity seeds, and again, the emu feathers with the raffia. Now, something that our mob have done for thousands of years is gather around firelight and sharing stories, dancing, singing, medicine, all that good stuff around the firelight. And in modern times, we sit under lights. So I thought, how cool would it be to have the fire, but then have it represented through the light? And that's why it's this colour. Now the basket is representing of time and of elders. And we've flipped that basket over because it's pouring out the knowledge. It's pouring out the knowledge and it's filling the vessels, the minds of the future generations, and the seeds, healing powers in these trees, but they're also an opportunity for growth and for these little followers to take that on and grow that elsewhere. And that is how we have kept our culture and our people strong for thousands and thousands of years. And if you come and bend over and have a look up inside, you'll notice what appears to be a bit of a cave painting. And I sat down with my babies and I showed them how we did our cave paintings, how Mum taught me, her father taught her, so on and so forth, with the emu fat and the ochre. And they've applied that on Hessian. And some people might say, why'd you use Hessian? Hessian was one of the things that my grandmother used when she first got married and went to live in Neverbunna with my grandfather. She was working for R.M. Williams for a little while and then she got married. She had a lot of Hessian bags saved and she put those down on the floor as a foundation. And so I wanted to have that foundation strongly secured of our history, of who we are, deeply rooted within ourselves. And then that's what we're passing on. We're building strong babies, one stitch at a time, one story at a time, one word at a time. Some of us have lost some things, but it's what matters most is what we still got and what we're still passing on. And for us, that's the continuance and that's the continuum. And I just wanted to sing a song, if that's all right. There's a story, my family's organisation's called Vili Warrenayurs, and there's a story about a mother with two kids that wander off, and she makes food to bring them home, and she sings a lullaby for them to come back. And this story is about keeping your babies close, your family close, and looking after each other. Doesn't go for very long. Vili warana mania Vildaraika manda Vili warana mania Vildaraika manda Andu valda wawari. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, can we just stop there? I can't top that. I can't top that. I think I've watched Nellie's practice for a really long time, and I see it building from strength to strength, and there's this kind of confidence in the materials that you're using, but also a real strength in how you're involving your children and letting them leave their mark on your work. I think that, these creation stories that start through this exhibition really are the grounding points to how we can discuss all of the other ranges, some more problematic than others, but I feel like this suite of works really are the ideas that we have to carry throughout the whole show, but carry with us all the time. I felt like it would be completely disrespectful to not have that put front and centre, particularly this notion of language and language that is lost and language that's being refound, and how children and young people are learning how to do that work, but particularly for hardworking parents, what that is like when I suppose you go through other systems of learning that just aren't welcoming of that. So, you know, that's that kind of, that's additional work outside of everything else, and it's so important. So thank you for sharing that with us, Nellie. Thank you so much. From Nellie's work, I will just quickly move through these pieces, but between Jacob and Nellie is Hanapera Aoki, who is a Maori artist. She wrote, it's called On the Maintenance of Art and Community, or Imagining the Future in the Present, Aka Care. And it was a manifesto for parents, which was published in fine print a few years ago. And it really struck a chord with me, this idea that she was bringing together the idea of maintenance, labour, work, all while looking at the world differently after the birth of her first child. And she was really humbled by the opportunity to revisit that idea. I think we went through a number of combinations of what it could look like in the space, but since having a child and working more in text and language, as well as being a community activist, she really wanted to find a way to bring all of those things together. And what she sort of landed on was this revisiting of the manifesto, but having it read by an elder and a community leader. I just want to quote from the catalogue. Oki returns to this notion of maintenance and connection to labour and extraction of our natural resources, honing in on their local environment and invasive planting of non-Indigenous trees within their community. Aoki has watched as the ageing, looming pine trees have damaged its surroundings. Reinforcing their collaborative relationships with communities and elders, a recording of the manifesto was offered by a local activist and mentor. History does by nature repeat itself, but what Aoki reinforces here is that parenthood can reshape behaviour and values. She was really passionate about being placed between Nellie and Jacob's work. She really connected with the stories that were being told in those two pieces, but also like this connection of what invasive plant life can do all around the world. And so, yeah, this idea, what she'd been watching was this pine tree in her backyard kind of like leak this yuck, sort of like this yellow sap all over her back fence, and she'd been documenting it for a little while. We were throwing around the idea of having like a live stream to this pine tree and showing it in the gallery, and I was like, oh, the tech's just going to drive me insane trying to pull that off. But what she ended with was this beautiful idea about, no, let's just bring it back to language, let's just bring it back to the words. And her and her community are still watching that tree, but are writing around it and continue to write. And so what she wanted to create was a new manifesto that was about, the first one was about caring for parents, this one is about caring for environment. And so the Earth Maintenance Manifesto is a very simple list, and she wants guests to leave the gallery with that. Now moving into this space, so again we sort of look at this symmetry of works, and I love the idea that we have two mothers kind of flanking each other across from two fathers. So this is an older work of Stephen's. He was really happy to bring this back from 2016, 2014. We threw around a lot of ideas of what this could look like, but he was really happy with that the film kind of has this small sort of place. Like it's a delicate, simple, humble kind of work. He wanted to include something from his actual family's home to be a part of it, but the film itself is sort of, I suppose it's like a moving image portrait, and it's a sort of act of self-archiving through the domestic and through a documentary style lens. So what Steve's trying to create here is by chopping up existing footage which he's found in his family archive, but by taking out the people and only leaving the sort of noises of them in the background, you have no sense of who the main protagonist of the film is. All of the rooms then take on a kind of ghostly state. What Raoul's whole practice is kind of examining with this overlap between First Nations art and the Western art canon. He's sort of challenging how they are represented and classified. So for us still, this film offers moments of insight into a family and upbringing that is a deeply honest understanding of what caretakers take pride in, or perhaps disguise when searching for validation. And I think for any parent that's here who works from home or has the luxury of leaving to go to a workplace, your home is kind of everything. It's a safety net, it's your workplace, it can feel like a jail cell sometimes. But what I really appreciated in this film and what Steve and I were talking about was this idea of how you document. And personally, as a mother, I always feel like I'm constantly documenting the children, I'm documenting the rest of their lives, but I'm very much absent from that imagery. And I watch this film and I can sort of sense what these parents were doing. They take a lot of pride in these moments, they take pride in their home, but underneath it all, there's kind of so much going on. Steve and I had conversations about the time that it was being filmed, and he was like, we moved around quite a bit. There was actually like some rough stuff happening. He even mentions that like some of the noises, once he'd finished the edit, he'd sort of recognised that noises in the background were like, people that had come into their lives for only a small moment, and it sort of like caused chaos and then had disappeared as well. And he was like, he was sort of intrigued by this idea that like these houses were holding so much, but really when you look back at it, it just seems like there's just almost nothing there. And then across we have a short film by Jared Flitcroft. Now, Jared's not a visual artist, He's a Maori filmmaker. I have to shout out to Grace Marlowe, an amazing public programmer and previous staff member of ACE, who we tried to have this as part of Yucky last year, and there was a lot of discussion about like how could we get this film in, where could it go, and unfortunately it couldn't happen for that project, but the idea of the film had stayed with me for a really long time. And as I mentioned, this idea about language, lost language, but also the idea that sign language needs to have a place and needs an equal footing in all of these conversations about rejuvenating language, acceptance of other languages, and how is that presented in these spaces. So Tama is a beautiful short film. It's about a young Maori deaf boy who wants to perform the haka, an important ceremonial dance in Maori culture. Misunderstood by his dismissive father and bullied by his brother, the main protagonist, Tama, struggles to find his place and feel seen. I think what I really enjoy in this movie is this idea of this young man really wanting to stand up and hold his culture, and this idea of like, when does that passing of knowledge actually happen? When do parents accept that their kids are ready for the responsibility? Like, what is that tipping point? And each family is very different, each culture is very different, but I think that particularly some projects that I've been part of in the last year or so, I think that there's definitely been this conversation about elders getting tired, elders getting really tired about doing all the work and kind of leading the way, and that, you know, there are a lot of young people that are ready to take that stand and to be involved and be a part of these spaces. And when I watched this film, I was like, yeah, this really exemplifies all of those ideas that I'm trying to kind of fit into this show. Flitcroft's film raises important awareness around differing forms of communication and value systems that interconnect with cultural practice, using 3 languages in its production: New Zealand Sign Language, Te Reo Maori and English. Tama exemplifies an important collaborative practice that centre the disabled experience not as a hindrance in filmmaking, but an expansive opportunity to share inclusive forms of storytelling. Jared's a dad as well, so I love that I've got 2 dads here and I've got 2 mums here. If we turn to Atongs, this amazing textile work is one of a very few artworks of Atongs that uses installation. It kind of really pushes her photography into a different space. It hadn't had many showings, so this is what she wanted to offer. I think another underlying presence in this exhibition is to welcome older works to be represented, to be reimagined and put into new conversation with other artworks. There's definitely I feel like there's new push to not always be seeking out new commissions, and particularly for those that are parents. We can't be making new work all the bloody time. So the conversation with Atong was really honest. She had a lot of gigs coming up. This had only made a couple showings previously, and but she really wanted to be in the show. The photographs, you know, Atong's got an astounding way of her visual language, using colour, using environment. If you've seen other installations of hers, there's lots of wallpapering, bright colours, bright designs. But what I love about this is that there's a whole kind of translucency to it. One screen disappears into another. She's really, you know, the crux of her work is about trying to explore this taking back of African bodies and decolonising the white gaze, like this taking back of their image through African studio portraiture. But in some of the Georgette sheets, they're very abstract. They kind of lose the sense of the person. There is a scattering of hair. You know, she wants to sort of explore that abject as well. I really yeah, I love this work. It's such a beautiful presence. I think that to walk around the corner and see such a strong woman looking down on you is really quite a striking kind of effect in the way that it's fleeting, the way that it moves from one sheet to another. It's really about that exploration of memory. She has a strong connection to trying to retell her story, her family's story of migration also. So a lot of the other photographs are of her family that have migrated to many different countries around the world. She's now proudly living in Nam with her young family, but I feel like, yeah, she calls this her family album, but on the most unique and beautiful scale. We're going to turn one more corner and end with the last three works around here. We're nearing performance time, so I will just briefly introduce you to these works. But again, as we started in the front space, there's kind of these countries being brought together. From the tip of the York Peninsula to Nellie's country, around Moonta and into the sort of centre of South Australia. In this end of the exhibition, we're at two ends of the Philippines archipelago. So we're looking here at the south, we can hear the north, and then we have this beautiful painting here by Mariquit Santiago. I might start with Mariquit. She's reclaiming, again, another artist who's trying to reclaim the Western gaze and the Western art canon. This is a replication of Michelangelo's Pieta, where the Virgin Mary is holding Jesus. She's replicated herself into the work, one side holding a snake and the other side holding a breastfeeding baby. She paints on recycled cardboard. A big element of the Philippines is the Balikbayan box. It's a very important box that's traded from country to country. We come from families who are migrant workers, who work as nannies, nurses, all around the world, and 2-3 times a year we're sending home packages that are just filled with gifts, soap, spam, laundry detergent, all sorts of things. But it's an important part of our culture. It's always about caring for our family, whether we're oceans or mountains away. So this material, the cardboard's very important. Again, I love that connection back to Jennifer about utilising whatever you have at hand. Mariquit's such an accomplished painter, and she gets to this point where she's completed her work, and then she hands over the paintbrush to her children. And so you see these marks through here are her children's doodles and drawings and additions to her exquisite paintings. There are marks on this side that she really wants them to participate. It's really about taking down the Western masters. It's giving them a place. And again, she's also a fierce advocate for artists as workers, that this is an important labour that should be recognised, and she's trying to instill that in her children as well. The gorgeous furniture piece, most Filipino homes you'll see are merely just like a square. There's not many dividing walls, so there are these beautiful screens throughout. So this amazing piece of furniture is a bespoke designed, and again harks back to this division of rooms, but this real sense of home. Across the way is Benji Ra. I hope some of you, if you were here last night, saw an amazing performance by Benji. Now, Benji, are you okay with me talking on your behalf? Would you know? This film is outstanding. It's done a bit of a tour, it's done a few laps, but what we are so privileged to have is this amazing map beneath it, in an incredible project between Benji, some beautiful collaborators across Manila. She's been able to travel to these islands and to make this work with the community, bring these elements back and have it here installed for the exhibition. So I just want to quote from the wall label so that there's no error with this language, but This woven balu mat made in Talisad Island tracks the three sisters' journey with their mother Jamjaraya from Laminusa Island in the Sulu Sea of Talisud Island, Davao del Norte. The women fled with their community from Laminusa in the 1970s due to martial law, and the patterns draw from indigenous motives of balu making in each island they fled to. Some Laminusa tribes are bound with water and historically vulnerable and deemed stateless through the creation of colonial land-based national borders. The weaving project was initiated by artist Benji Ra, who collaborated with the weavers in divining and remembering a tradition form lost to time and constant displacement, and through the generational loss of cultural bearers. Through the weaving process, Benji with the weavers proposed a way of reassembling and reinvigorating the frayed strands of communication between generations, asking questions of both retention and loss. The patterns on display reflect the archipelagic experience, the ever-shifting cartographic symbols of displacement from political and climate upheaval. Articulated in the colours and the cross-hatching in the woven mats are enduring familial conversations of origin stories of sea-based territories. I think in combination with the film, this speaks volumes to intergenerational learning. Benji has amazing communities, not only in the Philippines, but all across this country too, that's about instilling culture, learning dance, practice, but really emboldening and empowering a younger generation to hold that power too. And so we see this dance being held by youngsters, being performed with elders, and Biradali's alive and well. We're going to end with Tun Andrew Nguyen just through here. It's an absolute pleasure to have another work that's been filmed in the Philippines but speaks to an even greater story about migration, colonisation, and seeing kids on film. Tun Andrew Nguyen is a Vietnamese-American artist. He's an artist that really is deeply connected into researching archives, to creating mystical stories. He's a sculptor as well. This is one of them getting set alit. But he spends a lot of time in these communities, learning their archives, learning their stories. This was filmed in a place in the Philippines, Bataan. It's a site where many refugees from the Vietnam War and then beyond have all migrated to and were housed for quite some time. There are many relics of that time, and this particular sculpture which he's recreated is one of the boats that the first Vietnamese refugees came on and were relocated in the Philippines. I think that I guess what I wanted to bring together here at the very end of the exhibition, what this film really highlights is that sculptures and relics hold memory, hold history, hold time, but can hold a really traumatic and devastating part of a family's history before and after. And so what these children do through this film is that they collect all of these relics, they try to understand them, they try to rebuild them, and then the best that they can do, and what really I think is like a beautiful kind of metaphor for all of it, is they just burn it all to the ground. And I suppose, you know, it's in First Nations storytelling as well that when a person moves on, everything is burnt. What really holds memory is people. People hold memory, people hold practice. You can put what you can into sculpture, you can put what you can into material outputs, but essentially community building, knowledge systems, listening to our kin, respecting our elders, and listening to our country will ensure that these stories will go on and on and on. And so what I was really taken with this is that that's really exemplified in just setting it all on fire. And this film gives me chills, it really does. There's something about, I mean, kids in films always makes me a little excited, but to see them trying to understand a history that precedes them, that they have no knowledge of, I feel as if there's something existential in that, that we're all trying to understand our place in this world. We're trying to understand the processes that were put in place before us that are meant to be in service of us, but really don't service us at all. I think what Benji's work does, I think what Nellie's trying to do with her family is about taking the parts of that knowledge but instilling something new, something realistic, and something that is more ancestral and simpler, that can go beyond all of the material that we seem to be in such excess of, and the relics that we seem to want to, or have been forced to hold on to for so much longer. I think I'll end with that. For those who would like to stay here for the performance, I think if someone can just give me a time, where are we at? Okay, so for those who would like to stay for the performance, we're going to move back into the front space now, and it will be in a state of transition right now. The performance will be on. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for coming back to ACE. This exhibition runs till the 12th of April. Please do come back and spend time with this work. It's really quite outstanding, the stories that these artists are trying to tell, but collectively there's a bigger important idea that's just flowing through lots of shows right now that I think we're all starting to fully embrace and are learning to understand and embody. So thank you for your time. Please join me in the front gallery for the performance now. Thank you.